everybody out there in YouTube. This is Thomas Metal 75, your Massachusetts beer reviews. And today, this is entirely Massachusetts themed. We are joined by Jay Theriault from the Louisiana Beer Reviews.
I don't think it's entirely Massachusetts thing because I'm drinking Milwaukee's Best.
There you go. But this one right here, this 1 pint 6 fluid ounces beer is from the town of Canton, Massachusetts, which is it's maybe 20 or 30 minutes at most out south of Boston. That's by the town of Milton and Braintree, Mass. This is the Blue Hills Brewery. This is their tree beer. Now, tree beer is a Kolsch style beer. They say that it is Blue Hills Brewery is proud to team up with the legends of Boston hardcore rock, Tree, to release our first band collaboration beer. Dave Tree, an East Coast musical icon, worked side by side with our Brewmaster to create a beer that can be enjoyed by the common man as well as craft beer lovers. They brewed a Kolsch-style ale, a beautiful yellow body, and an aromatic hop profile. This beer is the result of the local band and a local brewery coming together to give what the people want. It is 7.5% alcohol by volume.
5.7. Hey,
Yes.
I have had the Canoe Paddler. I think that was a Kolsch from Leinenkugel.
Oh, yes.
And I had one from Shiner, and those two were okay, but they were kind of dull. The ones that I've had that I thought were really good was Reisdorf Kolsch.
Right. I think I have one of those. Actually, I believe I have one of those in my refrigerator right now. Now that you mention that.
Yeah, and Sooner Kolsch.
Yes.
Both from Germany.
This one, from the several Kolsches that I've had, and if anybody doesn't know that's watching the Massachusetts Beer Reviews, they were first brewed in the town of Klon, Koln, Germany, which they say on Beer Advocate now. Many American brew pubs and handful of breweries have created their own version of the obscure style. They can be light to medium bodied. They're very pale color, as you can blatantly see here. Hop bitterness is medium and slightly assertive. A somewhat viscous, like grapes, like a grapey to a malty flavor, and a dry flavor to make up the rest. Now, this is on the high side of the Kolsch style for the ABV at 7.5%. And as they say on that description on Beer Advocate, it definitely has the pale body. It's almost sort of looks thin and watery on camera here, but in the light, it definitely has a golden color, more yellow outside of the light. Yeah. And as you can see from the lacing, it did have some pretty nice lacing when I poured it into my Anheuser-Busch 11-ounce taster.
I think
you probably can see the carbonation there from the etching on the bottom. It's very effervescent.
I have one of those glasses. I think the Reisdorf and the Sooner Kolsch are like 4.8, huh?
Yeah, they're not much more than 5. I mean, it says that 4 to 8%, but that's a pretty gigantic range for a beer, if you ask me.
I think so. And it's that city is pronounced Cologne in English.
Cologne, and it has the umlaut over the O.
Yeah, in German they pronounce it like Cologne.
Gotcha.
You know, so we're not too good at that.
So yeah, the smell of the tree beer is definitely you definitely get some, and I noticed this with a lot of the Blue Hills beers and some of these microbrews. They kind of, I don't know if they're actually using honey in their brewing process, but it has that kind of honey-like sweetness to it, like a clover honey almost. And it might be easy fermentable to get for brewing. I'm not sure. And I am getting that breadiness, some sweetness from that honey that I'm smelling. A little bit of a lemoniness, but not too much of a lemon flavor. I mean, overall, it's a pretty dry, kind of a bready, slightly malty beer.
Kind of like a lager.
I'm not really getting, not too many hops I'm getting.
Kind of like a lager?
Yeah, it's very similar to that, but I think it's got just a little bit more of a malty flavor than your standard pale lager. So let's give I'll give tree beer a try. Cheers to Jay, for joining me on this impromptu beer review. Cheers, everybody.
Clink. Impromptu, you mean?
Yes, correct.
My daddy always tells me, "Don't correct me. What's wrong with you?" I say, "Well, it's wrong, Daddy."
The smell is a little different. I mean, the taste is a little different than the smell. I mean, you're getting in the finish is what I'm trying to say there. The finish is a little different than anything else I smelled. Now, from what I smelled, I do taste some honey-like sweetness, some bready, kind of a biscuity, malty kind of a flavor, a little bit of some of that lemony flavor. It's probably a light to a medium-bodied beer, but the finish, the three words that come to mind in the finish would be earthy, grassy, and herbal, or even kind of on the slightly herbal kind of a side. It's definitely got the fresh cut grass and that fresh cut, I guess that fresh cut grass and that, a fresh kind of a hop flavor. It's not one of those, it's not really a hoppy forward beer. I can't imagine that it's anything. I got to imagine that's less than 30 IBUs for what it is.
So if somebody's looking for a hop bomb, they better search elsewhere.
Exactly. And I do get a little bit of a spicy kind of a hop flavor too, but mixed with a little bit of that bready malt. And I would say a light to medium bodied beer. It's got a little bit of the lemoniness. It's got a nice crispness, but again, there's a little bit of an herbal hop, and it's kind of, and maybe Jay knows some other beers that might be easier to explain, but I'm not really sure how to explain to people what that herbal hop is actually all about. But I just know that it has that thing going on in the beer.
I don't know, because
it's kind of a hard thing to describe. You almost got to try a beer that has those flavors to sort of understand it that way.
When you're finished talking about this particular Kolsch,
yeah,
I want to bring something up.
Sure.
I think
as our buddy in Australia, Swillengrog, would say, it's definitely holding that taste profile very well.
Yeah.
I would say again, the mouthfeel is on the light side of medium. It's got just a little bit of that syrupy sweetness. I mean, a tiny bit of a syrupy sort of a texture. It's not really that, it's not like maple syrup kind of a viscosity to it, but it's got a tiny itty bitty bit of a viscosity, which is what the Blue Hills Brewery website was talking about. So I am definitely picking up on that note.
And what town is this in again?
This is in the town of Canton, Massachusetts, which is probably 20 to 25 minutes outside of Boston. Oh. I think it's towards, it's on, I believe it's off of Route 128 south. So you have to go south from Boston to get to Canton, Massachusetts.
Let me see.
Over by the Blue Hills Reservation, part of the Massachusetts Audubon Society, which is our wildlife sort of conservation group.
Yeah, they have that here. Audubon Institute. Let's see. It's
a pretty dry and clean finishing beer. So if you're looking for, definitely a step in a different direction and in a more sophisticated, I would say, not a better direction than something like perhaps Urban, but if you're looking for something a little bit more alcohol in body and I guess a fuller and richer flavor, as Jay has sometimes pointed out in some of his malt liquor reviews, then this is maybe one. If you can get New England beers, I would definitely try a tree beer.
Yes, and
I'd give it a straight, just the B range. I think there are probably better examples of Kolsch's out there, but for me, it's a really good beer nonetheless. I don't know if it really exemplifies the style, but I think it's a really good beer, and I do think it's a beer that the common man could get into and appreciate, and I'll give it a B. And definitely, I will end my little spiel here for the moment by saying, if you have any micro beers or any nano sort of breweries out there in your part of the country, go and explore them. They're a really good place to not only try beers, but to learn about the brewing process. We all don't have Miller and Coors and Anheuser-Busch in our neck of the woods, but you can go to these little nano breweries and microbreweries, support them, and get some beer education all along the way. So yeah.
Yeah, and okay, I found out where that little town of Canton was. I looked on that. Okay, so I listened to what you said. Now here's 2 reviews, February 2013 and April 2013, that I wrote. So it's over 3 years ago. Reisdorf Kolsch, 4.8% alcohol. I was right. Reisdorf Kolsch this is what I wrote, has a thick, foamy, slightly off-white head, a clear, bubbly, golden appearance, and some pretty thick lacing left behind. The aroma is a pungent barley malt and generalized beer, like beer flavor. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like anybody would drink it and say, that tastes like beer to me. Taste is of sweet bread, barley malt, a dash of hearty hops, clean water. Mouthfeel is light to medium, and Reisdorf Kolsch finishes crisp, refreshing, mild, and delicious. Overall, this is quite good, and I strongly suggest checking it out. And I gave it a solid A, but that's that, and you drank something else. Okay. Here's Sunder Kolsch.
Okay.
Also from Kolsch, Cologne.
That's got to be one of the more known about Kolsch's, I would figure.
Yeah, you see it a lot. You want to hear this one?
Yes, I do.
The Sunder Kolsch has a medium to thick white head.
Yeah.
A somewhat hazy, bubbly, golden appearance, and a bit of lacing left behind, and little white specks suspended throughout. The aroma is a pungent, sweet, bready malt, and the flavor is the same, with a light hop bitterness and some biscuit aspects as well. The mouthfeel is light to medium, and Sunder Kolsch finish is crisp, clean, refreshing, and dry, like a lager. That's why I brought it up earlier. Overall, this is very good and enjoyable. I recommend it. And I also gave that an A, most excellent. So, well, you know, those are from Germany. They're the original.
So hearing what you're saying about those 2 Kolsch beers, I don't think there's such a thing. No, there definitely isn't such a thing to what I'm going to say here. But just looking at Beer Advocate and going back to what they say, I got a little bit of that information incorrect. I said it was between 4 and 8%. They say the average range of a Kolsch is between 4 and 6% on Beer Advocate. And I still think that's.
I thought you said 5.8. So
no, 4 to 6%. I still think that's. In a way, I still kind of think that's a big range. 2% is kind of a big range between it being a sort of a light alcohol percentage beer and sort of close to a heavier beer. And this one, being a 7.5, this tree beer, 7.5% range, I know there's not such a thing as an Imperial Kolsch, but from what I'm hearing from those 2 reviews that you did of traditional world-renowned Kolsches, it seems like this one's a much bigger and fuller-bodied and richer experience than those.
Wait a minute. You said 7.5? I thought you said 5.7.
Nope. This one is 7.5%, this Blue Hills tree beer.
Oh, no, that is like so strong. I don't think that's correct for the style. But, you know, that's like a little way of looking at beer. Like some people will say, well, I like the beer, but I'm going to give it a bad rating because it doesn't fit the style.
Right.
I can understand that viewpoint. It's like, it's good, but it's not fitting the style, so I'm going to jump at that. I don't do that personally, but I can understand. I'll comment on it. I'll say it doesn't taste like the style, but I'm not a style expert, so I don't really get into it.
I'm not either. I mean, I like to look. I like to kind of know what I'm getting into, so hopefully I can, you know, properly explain it in a way that it makes sense instead of, you know, using words and terminology that don't make sense for the style. But there's only one review of this beer, of this tree beer, on a Beer Advocate, and it's and this one guy gave it 3.77 out of 5, which is just a little bit above. Well, I mean that's getting close to very world-class rating. It's getting very close to that.
No, I would say world class would be close to 5 out of 5.
Yeah, I mean we're getting up towards the A range, in other words. But it's definitely. I feel like it's a different take on this. I mean, it's not a different take on the style, but they sort of just make it a little bit more richer and full-bodied and robust of a version of the beer, and maybe that's what Dave Tree from the band Tree was going for when he created this tree beer. He wanted to have probably a richer and a fuller-bodied experienced beer, but one that probably his fans of the band Tree and just people in general that want to buy the beer can can have and drink it, and that wouldn't personally offend them in the style, because a Kolsch beer and German lagers and Czech pilsners and even adjunct lagers, for that matter, from the United States of America and Canada and Mexico and throughout the Western Hemisphere, are really accessible beers. Unless they have really wanky off flavors or they're really, really old beers, they're going to be pretty much unoffensive, and one that the masses can get into and drink and won't have a problem drinking it. And this beer is like that, but you do notice a little bit more of the, like they said, that whiny, grapey kind of viscosity almost.
How much does that bottle cost?
I was just going to say that all the beers, I went there on Thursday and also went to Trillium before that to do a tasting with a buddy of mine. They do tastings on Fridays and Saturdays only at Blue Hills, and all the bottles of these pint 6 fluid ounces bottles, all of them were $5 only.
That's not too bad. I went to Trader Joe's and they had some, you know, those, they call it Trader Joe's Ale.
Yes.
I think it's made by Unibrew of Canada.
Oh, you mean the vintage ales?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are good.
They had 2 different types. They had the Trader Joe's Vintage Ale, and then they had one called...
They have one called like a provisional ale, right? Like a golden provisional.
Oh, that's Maria. Hey, Maria. And they had one called Trader Joe's like 2012 Ale. It was like from 2012. It had been aged for 4 years. I couldn't get over that.
Really?
I didn't buy it, but I was like, golly, look at all these ales, you know. But
Oh, I see it here. It says on Beervikit. Well, they list the 2012 vintage ale as being that Belgian dark strong ale.
Yeah, so they just kind of like made a bunch and they let it age.
That's really cool.
But then they had some of those little devils, those little evil Trader Joe's beers, like
like the name tag lager.
Yeah, and that old, what do they call it? Old Times or whatever that thing's called.
Old Good Times or something like that.
I have a can.
Or Leisure Time or something like that. I don't know.
I couldn't bring myself to do it. I was like, I can't do it.
I haven't tried those yet because you've been you've been so displeased with those things. I haven't even tried them yet.
Simpler times. They ought to call it. Yeah. They ought to call it Bad Old Times.
Now I have a review that I did, and I never even posted it on beer or on my YouTube channel. I don't know why. I did a review of their Joseph's Brow Lager, and I checked style pilsner, and I thought that was excellent beer.
Yeah, because those are made by Gordon Biersch and Firestone Walker.
Yep.
So they contract brew with like the evil people of the beer world, and they contract brew. You know,
if that's what's considered mass-produced beer, well, they're doing mass-produced beer correctly.
So they'll go and they'll get beers from Minhas, all these beers that they're all wrong, like all of them are wrong. Me and my daughter a bunch of reviews, and then they'll go and turn around and do contract brewing with Unibrew and Firestone Walker and Gordon Biersch.
Yeah.
So Trader Joe's is like hit or miss. It's like some stuff is so good, and others is like, oh my goodness. So I bought a sherry wine and I bought a bourbon from them. Not a bourbon, what do you call that? Brandy. And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Could be really good, or it could be. Huh?
You mean their label?
No. It's just some stuff they carry, but it was like really cheap. It was like oddly cheap. So I'm a little worried. Now, Maria, we were looking at the
Paul Mason of brandy, basically.
Well, actually, the Paul Masson was pretty good, but no, Trader Joe's you might get like the I don't know. They're just a weird company. They're like you don't know what you're gonna get.
The box wine of brandy, basically.
But that place is packed. They got people in there all the time. They swear by Trader Joe's.
I mean, they got really good prices. I've noticed several times that I bought beer over there that they seem to have really good beer prices.
Excellent beer prices, but like I say, it's like Russian roulette. You don't know when that bullet's going to go off. Hey, Maria, we were looking at Kolsch, and Eric was drinking a Kolsch that's so strong it doesn't seem to fit the style.
Yeah, I don't know if you. I don't think you should get these beers where you are, Maria. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. It's from the Hills Brewery. I don't know if you've heard of that.
No, no. And I love Kolsch. In fact, I have one in the refrigerator, and although I'm really tempted to go get it and open it, do you mind if I just get something else?
Go right ahead.
And open it instead because it's special. The Kolsch is special.
Yeah, by the way, this one that I was drinking.
We're not dictators, Maria. We're not dictators. We don't tell people what to do.
Okay, I will do it. I'll write something up on it.
This one was, I don't know if you can see it there.
On the Kolsch, and I'm happy to talk to you about it all day. Let me go get my beer. Hold on.
7.5% Kolsch, a big old one.
Seems right. It seems like it's a high gravity malt liquor.
Yeah, you know, I do notice when you say that. I mean, I don't get any of the corn or the rice or like a papery or a husky kind of a note from the beer.
Water, barley, malt, hops, and yeast.
Yeah, I just noticed again, like the Blue Hills Brewery. I'm trying to get to the website. Like their website says, or maybe it's the. I'm trying to figure out where it was that I read that. I read it on Beer Advocate that sometimes these Kolsch beers can almost have that grapey, malty viscosity, and I had totally got that from the beer, which kind of reminded me of a malt liquor, and I didn't even think about it until you just said it. It kind of did remind me of a malt liquor, of a mouthfeel to it. Now, malt liquors to me don't really have, really a full-bodied, flavor to them, but they can kind of be in that medium range to a light to medium range, and this was definitely in that medium range. For whatever reason, and I maybe would have to go to the brewery and ask them that, it had like a clover honey syrupy kind of a sweetness to it. Maybe they do use clover honey because maybe that is a easily obtainable fermentable sugar to produce beer with for a microbrewery.
In your Kolsch? There was honey in your Kolsch, is that what you're saying?
It tasted that way. They don't come right out and say what they brewed the beer with. They don't say that.
And
on the website.
It was syrupy, you say? Syrupy?
It sort of had that. It had that feeling to it. And by the way, I said in the beer review, I didn't think that the beer was any more than 30 IBUs. It had to have been less than 30 IBUs. Their website said it was 60 IBUs, which I find is heavily masked. I don't get that much bitterness at all myself. Now maybe the kids at the Boston College might find this beer really, really hoppy. I don't find it really hoppy.
Well, Kolsch is so bready. And so is it syrupy, like sweet syrupy? Right, sweet.
Well, it's just syrup. I guess I say syrupy in the sense of if you ever tried honey before, it's got that kind of a taste to it.
Yeah. No, the Kolsch is like incredibly bready. Most people, when they have an authentic Kolsch, they're like, gee, it's bready. And then they're nonplussed because they too are looking for hops that aren't there. But it shouldn't be syrupy.
And I mean, it just sort of had that in the background. That was what I think was contributing to the sweetness. But I did definitely, and I still do believe that I did definitely get a white bread, biscuity malt kind of a component to the beer as well. So it seemed like from what you're saying and from what I'm experiencing from this Blue Hills tree beer, I'm definitely getting some traditional flavors, but with a little bit more alcohol percentage, and it just had a little bit of a more of a richer, fuller-bodied flavor and more of a sweet honey kind of a component. But it wasn't cloying. It wasn't too much of a sweetness. It didn't taste like it was just...
Well, what was the ABV? Do you mind my asking?
What was that?
What was the ABV?
Oh, this was 7.5%.
Oh, yeah, that's way too sweet and way too much alcohol. Ithaca Beer made a Kolsch, and they called it Daydreamer.
Mm-hmm.
That came out a couple of years ago. Theirs was 7% also, and it had some of the qualities that you're talking about. It more closely, it didn't resemble a Kolsch at all, as a matter of fact, because the alcohol was just too strong.
Yeah.
And it had overblown esters from yeast in it because the alcohol was just too strong, and it did. And
Right.
I didn't taste it this year because it still had the same ABV when I went to go buy it, so I didn't buy it again. But it, like, that wrong finish is all because of the alcohol.
Yeah, because again, the finish that I got on the beer, and that could have been more, and maybe that contributes to 60 IBUs, because I said to myself, and I said it on this review, that it was grassy, earthy, and herbal. So maybe that was the 60 IBUs coming out of the beer, and maybe that's not. I don't know. I don't think that could be too far off on a Kolsch, but it tasted like it probably, and maybe it did. It tasted like it had a pretty hoppy finish, but the body of the beer.
The Kolsch can be really hoppy. That's the other thing, right? The Kolsch has that wide swing in it too, as far as interpretation from the brewer. So, I mean, basically what you're looking for is the barely perceptible fruity ester from yeast, and that's just so pertinent to the style that at 7%, that's already gone. That's not there anymore. So the style's already not met, and your finish is wrong because you have too much alcohol, so your style's not met. But
kind of a fruity flavor I got from it was maybe a lemony kind of a flavor.
Well, what I was going to say is, as far as hoppiness and hop bitterness, people say that the Kolsch resembles the blonde.
Right.
So if there's like a doppelganger style, it's that one.
Okay.
And that one's really hoppy. It can be really hoppy, really bitter, and really showcase a variety of texture from hops. It doesn't have to be, low to no hops to be a Kolsch. It can be hoppy.
Sure. And I think a lot of I believe, and I still believe that, I think a lot of it, 60 IBUs, came out probably more in the finish. Like I said, earthy, grassy, and herbal. That's got to be hop characteristics right there for you.
Oh, yeah.
But
earthy,
I didn't get the sense
herbal is hops.
in the middle of the beer. I didn't get the sense that in the first sip and in the middle of the beer before it finished that I was getting much of a presentable hop flavor until it did finish.
Did it taste like it wanted to be a triple? Like when you were drinking it, did you say, "Oh, this is good," but it's kind of confused. Maybe wants to be a triple.
I didn't. Maybe I'm getting the triple style wrong, but I didn't notice that it had much of a yeasty flavor that contributed to it wanting to be going in that direction.
No, I don't mean from yeast. I mean from the way that malt comes to 7%.
I didn't get that sense at all. Not particularly. It sort of to me, and Jay sort of gave me that idea about that. Maybe it was more like a Helles Bock, maybe in a way, but because they used the Belgian or the ale yeast, it was definitely a Kolsch and not the Helles Bock.
I don't think
it was like that.
I don't think it really fits the style, but it's no big tragedy.
Yeah, I mean, again, their whole idea in the collaboration with this guy Dave Tree from this band Tree that I've never even heard of from Boston.
I've heard of them. They make my favorite hop pun beer.
The guy Dave Tree put it together. All they basically say is this beer is a result of a local band and a local brewery coming together to give the people what they want. So it's more of an imperial style that shouldn't be able to offend the normal, average kind of a beer drinker in the United States.
Who was it that made that Mango American Kolsch? I think it was Clown Shoes. Oh, was that delightful. Right. Not only was it delightful, but it resembled, to my palate, the blonde, and that was the first thing I said when I was drinking it. I'm like, boy, this is fruity a little from hops.
That was 6%, yep.
And I don't remember the alcohol on it. Can you look it up real quick?
Yeah, it says on Beer Advocate it's called Mango, and it's a 6% Kolsch. It's got a rotating availability. They say it's kind of, what do they say? It's a traditional German Kolsch, but adding that natural mango flavor. Warning: this beer is not Reinheitsgebot. Huh.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a German beer, but because they use the mangoes, it's not German.
Yeah, and it was just a hair too much ABV, right? But that was one that exceeded, right? That did exceed the ABV, not a whole bunch.
They list on
And not
beer
terrible.
that the range of a Kolsch is between 4 and 6, so that one's right on the high end of 6, on that range at 6%. But apparently, to me, a Kolsch, even at that little tiny between 4 and 6 range, I think that's still a big range for a beer. I still think it's a big range.
It's
The most
believe
average
it or
American
not, those tenths of a percentage point inch up in the ABV, like there's not a whole lot of difference between, let's say, 4.4% and 5.2%, but then you start inching it 3, 4, 5, 6, and when you get to 6%, now that's a strong beer.
You got to
That's
remember
not the
this one
same
too.
kind of beer anymore.
You got to remember this one too, which is where I think that this Blue Hills a tree beer is kind of going, kind of the direction they're going is again, it's an American, it's a beer brewed in America by an American micro, or even probably best considered a nano brewery. So just knowing that, you can almost, you know, if you tried the beer and you taste it, and even at 7.5%, you can almost go off of the assumption of, well, there's another American brewery taking a classic style and making it American and putting their own stamp and twist on it in their own American way.
And unfortunately, as Americans, we have the reputation for putting our own stamp on it by making it too strong and by using too many hops.
But I mean, overall, I gave
Maria's right.
I'll tell you, you know, if you want to taste a beer that uses hops expertly and in the range of low hop presence in the beer, taste that Weihenstephaner 1516 Keller beer. That is a unique and individual beer, and I defy you to tell me what the base style is, because I have my views on it, my little interpretations, but the hop presence in that beer was like nothing that's out there. It was totally different. And you have to try it to see. But I mean, like when you get a beer that shows you, like, you know, it showed me this beer, like that's the thing to latch onto, right, in your review, and then everything else you can kind of piece together, even if you don't know the style, just from like that one thing.
Yeah. I think Jay said it at one point when I was doing the beer review before you joined, Maria, that
I know, and started talking, and now it's time for me to tick a lock and let y'all go back to your review.
Sure. And I guess what I was going to say before you go is that, you know, it's always good to keep that style, you know, stylistically, the style in mind, but sometimes you just sometimes you're just reviewing a beer for the sake of reviewing a beer, and you're just, you know, trying to get the point across if it's a good beer or not. And me saying I give it a B range for, you know, overall as a beer, I give this, you know, that's exactly what I do. I give it an overall B range as a beer. I don't think that anybody would be offended by the beer. It is a little bit higher in ABV, so watch out how many pint bottles you're going to consume in a night. But, you know, I guess overall as a Kolsch, it wouldn't be on the top of my list. But I think as an overall beer with the general populace in mind, I think it's a pretty good beer that anybody might want.
Yeah, we were talking about that before you came on. We were saying, well, sometimes you review a beer and you say, this doesn't fit the style, and you want to. Some people will give it a bad score because of that. But then oftentimes I'll mention that fact, but I'll still give it a high score if I think it's well made. You know, it might be misstyled, mislabeled or something. I don't know. Does that make any sense?
Well, sure. And if you like it, you know, does it matter if there was innovation? And that's the other thing. Is it innovation or not? Like, you know, why did the brewer exceed the ABV? Was that deliberate? Why is it called a Kolsch? You know, I mean, like, you have to kind of accept style as your guideline or as your baseline, I guess. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, if it's terrific and you love it, then so what?
Well, actually, on the website here, on the BlueHillsBrewery.com website, they say Kolsch / Strong Pale Ale, which I didn't mention. So
well, that makes a whole heck of a lot of difference too, right? Because, like, okay, I'll tell you an example. Saranac's got a blueberry blonde. You know how I hate fruit beer. I got a Radler in the refrigerator. I don't even want to touch it. It's got fruit juice in it.
Oh.
But anyway, so Saranac's got a blonde,
I'll drink it.
blueberry blonde with blueberry fruit juice added. I won't buy it. I look at it. I'm getting closer. Maybe eventually I'll get the single, but you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like that.
Yeah, you had the Abita strawberry, and you said, "Ugh, this is bad."
Well, but I mean, if they make an authentic blonde with the fruit juice,
Yeah.
then what's that going to be like? It has fruit juice in it, so when you go to review it, you have to say, well, you know, they said it was this or they said it was that, and is it? And that's a big part of the scoring. Is it drinkable, and is the interpretation that the brewer had for the beer, is that enjoyable? Does it work? Is it still balanced? I mean, you know, you can describe it any way it is, and that's always right because that's what it is, which is reviewing.
Yeah, and I'm not a big fruit beer person either, but you know, I don't.
Just calling this beer, if we don't look at the tree beer as a Kolsch style beer, if we just look at that beer
As a strong ale.
as a strong pale ale, that still doesn't narrow down the style a whole bunch because there's a lot of different places around the world that brew a strong pale ale.
Well,
Belgians got one. The Americans have one. I bet you the Germans have one. It looks like they have a strong pale lager, a Euro pale lager in Europe. But that's not
pale ale like the American style pale ales. Is that what they mean, or do they mean something else when you say
well,
pale
the
ale?
Americas.
I think they're talking about more like a blonde ale, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I would guess. That the closest one that I can find anything of noteworthy to would be a Belgian Strong Pale Ale.
Yeah.
Which can go anywhere between 7 and 12%.
Because see, that's misleading too, right? When you say pale ale, Americans are thinking of Victory Headwaters, of IPAs.
No, and you know what? When I read some of that description on Beer Advocate of a Belgian Strong Pale Ale, it makes a lot more sense to call it that style. Because now that I'm thinking about this beer and I'm drinking it, it's nowhere near the same thing, but it is along the characteristics of a Duvel.
Well, in your old guidelines, which is what I have, and I was going to ask you guys a favor. You have the new guidelines, right, Eric?
Yes.
Yeah, in your hand. See, I only have on paper the old ones.
Mm-hmm.
If you wouldn't mind, like when we go through stuff, telling me what the new guidelines say is compared to what the old guidelines say, I'm just going to jink mine up, with the pen and change what I need to.
The guidelines apparently were just updated on May 12th.
Yeah, but it's a pain in the butt to use. Have you tried to use it? You go on there, you got to scroll through every darn page to get to what you want.
I have the 2015 ones, but I have not seen this 2016 until I just looked it up on their website.
Okay, your 2000...
I'm going to get off of this chat soon because the news is coming on.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I only got one more thing to say. Okay, so your 6B Blonde Ale in your old guidelines says in the comments, in addition to more common American blonde ales, this category can also include modern English summer ales, American Kolsch style beers, and less assertive American and English pales.
Gotcha. Interesting. So
you're drinking an oddball.
Sometimes beer is just best enjoyed, and sometimes you all don't want to sit in front of a camera and review it and try to analyze it and pick it apart piece to piece. And this might be one of those beers that was never entirely designed to do that, but I'm glad I tried the beer. Again, it was only $5 for the bottle. It's a B beer. It's much better than an average beer. I would buy it again. I would share it since it's so bloody cheap. I will probably buy it again and share it with some folks and friends, maybe at a camp out or a barbecue this summer or wherever I'm going to go.
You did the first video review for this beer
in the world.
Yay! Woohoo!
All right, so I will probably try some more of the Blue Hills. I normally don't buy their beers for whatever reason, but they are pretty, I would say that above average beer rating range. So this has been a lengthy look at the Blue Hills Tree Beer. And until next time, keep tasting those great beers. Cheers.
Goodbye.
We'll see you all soon.
Goodbye. Shit.
Prost.